Alright, welcome back to Operation End Times. I'm your Jedi Warrior for Jesus, Bent Helsted. This is the Vikings series, Part 10, A Voice Out of Dan. When it comes to the Vikings and to Dan, Denmark, the mark, the seal in the forehead, there's all sorts of prophecy, and there's already all sorts of people out there that'll say, here's what it all means. Now, I found a website, I'm going to link it in the comments section, but it's all about the lost tribes of Dan and how the Antichrist comes from the tribe of Dan, the serpent. And like as I said in my last video, everybody wants to look at just the darkness, but everything has both two sides, two faces. Light cometh forth out of the darkness, out of the shadows. And that's what I'm trying to highlight here, even as we look at huge distortions, huge evilness, that what we see is the glory of God that manifests forth out of things. So, the Vikings, as we stand here today, we have this image of the Vikings, which is fairly positive. The logo of the Minnesota Vikings, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Viking with the helmet with the horns. Vikings and blonde-haired people, especially blonde women, dumb blondes, were very friendly people, happy people. And you know what? You can make fun of Vikings and you can make fun of blonde people, and we just laugh along and we don't get upset. But, a lot of other cultures, if you make fun of black people or if you make fun of, Islam, it's taboo and people ain't laughing, So the point I'm making is there's an association with the Vikings and the blondness. We've seen the blondness, how it's kind of all through this old ancient map of Israel, but it's from Mount Hermon, and it then projects northward, the blondness, till it gets to the Baltic Sea, where there's this unnatural concentration of blondness, which what that blondness tells us is that the earth has been divided up. It was divided in the days of Peleg, and it was divided as the Israelites, the children of Israel, came out of Egypt and went into the land of Israel. They divided up all the land, but the land already had a bunch of people living there, so either those people had to be killed, but, out of the darkness, because what I will tell you is, death, destruction, the sword, killing people, all of it is a shadow path and not of the glory of God. But out of this ancient land, we have all this darkness. We have all these people that are described as like evil: the Moabites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Philistines, the Amorites. And then the tribes of Judah. Dan, Judah, Ephraim, Naphtali. But as they took the Holy Land, starting with Joshua, they fought and warred. And, it was the fallen sons of God who came down up here at Mount Hermon, where they taught the art of war. And this whole countryside was filled with the male, ego, testosterone-driven, mighty man, a king, a lord, and all the religions, all the history, everything that's written is kind of from a male perspective, where women, it's a secret, it's kind of covered up, and women are subdued. They're viewed as cattle, as possessions, and they are in bondage. But out of all that darkness here, and evilness, we find rays of light. The daughters of men, the daughters of Dan, the Shumanite woman, the daughters who are fair. It's always the women, Ruth, who show true wisdom, that seem to save the day and that know what is going on. But let's be fair, there are also, men that are daughters. And see, the daughter is the female spirit. That just it's not actually being a woman. It's just, it represents the traits of like compassion, love, and mercy and nurturing. Whereas the male spirit mankind represents ego and testosterone and the mighty man and the ruler who rules by being cruel. But what we find is there's also acts of brotherly love. Esau reuniting with his brother Jacob. David and Jonathan building a stone, a little altar to their never-ending friendship. And the tribe of Dan, which all the children, the sons, and the little towns in the area of Dan all mean brotherhood, friendship. My brother is my friend. My helper is mighty. So we see a brother and a sisterhood developing, and within this male ego, testosterone-driven reality, of both seed lines, whether it be Seth or Cain or people that existed before Adam and Eve, they all had a mindset, which was lording by the man. Especially in the form of marriage, But out of this, both the nation of Israel, and Dan, the Norsemen, Denmark, Norway, what you see is women were treated with higher regard and as equals, and Jesus reflected that as well throughout his ministry and his walk, that he treated women as equals. So that's a ray of light, is out of this shadowness of lording from the male ego perspective. We can see the beginning of the seeds of true equality and brotherly and sisterly love sprouting through friendships, through brotherhoods, through women like Ruth cleaving to Naomi. Likewise, up north in the Baltics, in the blondness, we see this huge distortion in reality. And my sister at 9Nania, I put her video into the playlist here because she has a timeline where it shows the beast being the Roman Catholic Church. Well, hey, that was a big part of what happened with the Vikings and the blondness, or the Norsemen, because the word Viking didn't even exist until the 60s, kind of with Marvel Comics bringing Thor online and the NFL having the Minnesota Vikings. And why did that manifest in our day and age, Because it's in play, my friends. But the blondness from the concentration of the Baltic areas, brought forth the Viking Age, and it was set forth in motion by the Roman Catholic Church. Charlemagne the Great, the first European emperor who was crowned by the Pope Leo III. But by massacring the 4,500 Saxons 11 years prior, it set in motion the Saxons attacking the abbey at Lindisfarne, where the miraculous metal-covered four Gospels of Jesus Christ were supposedly stored, and it was a holy island. But it really wasn't the Vikings or the blondness. And there's some confusion because the Saxons kind of were like Vikings, but I think they were a lot more violent. They were a lot more responsible for the fall of Rome and battling the Roman Empire. But those were blonde and brown-haired people kind of south of northern Germany, in the France, German, Great Britain area, the Saxons, Whereas the blondness, the Vikings, was kind of up by Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and those countries right on the eastern side of the Baltic Sea, Latvia, and I'd have to look at a map. But, based on the Viking Age and all these bad, negative waves of hatred, from what Charlemagne did and from the attack on the abbey, the Vikings would have seemed to have had every reason to go out pillaging and plundering, which was the standard of the day, that every country, especially the Roman Catholic Empire, was killing people, especially if you didn't believe in Christ, But light came out of darkness because, in truth be told, the Vikings were more traders and skilled artisans that went around the world, man. That's what we're finding out, that they went everywhere, to the Middle East, to the Americas, and it was more friendship and establishing just and fairness and a brotherhood of, hey, we can exist on this planet together, So lightness comes out of dark. But we see once again, like in World War II, where and Nine Nania's video shows those four horsemen, but the red horse of war, Hitler, using propaganda to once again try and mold the perception, which for 1,200 years had been kind of negative through the church, saying Vikings are savages, evil, worshipping the devil. And then in World War II, blondness was repackaged as the super race and kind of spearheaded with the Germans, but it kind of reached on up into Denmark and Norway. But once again, no super race emerged. That's all part of a distortion. There's no superhuman race of blonde, blue-eyed people. It's a recessive genetic gene based on estrogen in the birth cycle. So what you found out was the blonde countries were pretty much passive. Denmark, Norway, none of them participated in the war. So it was kind of like a turning point for mankind in a way, which is choosing the path of humility, of peace, versus war, which is what the mighty man for thousands of years had chosen, glorified. And that's what the Vikings, prior to the Viking Age, had in their mythology with Odin and Thor. Odin was a conqueror, and Odin to me is a shadow figure in the long run. Could be, one of these fallen sons of God. But because the world was divided and they had these rules, don't intermarry and et cetera, it allowed the blondness to unnaturally spring forth, because left to its own devices, it's only a 2% variance. But despite all the labeling of the Roman Catholic Church, of Hitler packaging blondes as the superhumans, as the savages, blonde people are hella nice. And the Viking Age only lasted about 300 years, and they converted over to Christianity. And their mythology, the square, the church, the house that they had built and been living in, matched up remarkably with Christianity and Jesus. Thor was a mighty man who had to learn to be humble, who fell in love with a daughter of man. But Thor, the blondness, the Danish and the Norwegians, it was actually a fairly peaceful convergence, because their ideas and how they viewed religion and the gods actually overlapped. So it was, they kind of readily converted over to Christianity. I'm not saying there wasn't any violence, but it was a ray of light in an otherwise at least somebody was trying to paint up as a super dark place of death, destruction, pillaging, and plundering, which history just doesn't bear up. That's not what was going on. So anyway, that kind of brings us up to a couple of things. The voice out of Dan. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm a true daughter of Dan, a daughter of man, which is a new man, born again, a whole man, where I'm no longer enslaved or in bondage to my male ego, pride-driven spirit. I've been broken free, and I have the Holy Spirit, which is, the feminine aspects of God, which is mercy and compassion and love, ruling my heart. And I'm wearing it as the Christ head, and that is the new daughter of man. In Revelations we get a new name and a stone. It's not actually a name, it's a reputation. It's of being righteous and of being just. And the stone is a stone you can start building this new foundation where Christ is going to be the cornerstone that the carnal world of man rejected. But you're going to use it as the starting stone, and then add your stone and start making a heap of stones. Now there's all these stories, in all this wickedness in the book of Judges, where they had no king and men did what is right. They basically did genocide, the tribes of Israel fighting Benjamin, and they pretty much wiped them out. And they had to go find some women, and they got 400 virgins from the town or tribe of Jabesh Gilead, and they took the virgins to Shiloh. And ultimately what they ended up doing is having these sons of Benjamin, so they wouldn't be a cut-off branch, is they went up, and these women, they had a festival where they would dance at Shiloh, and that's where the Ark of the Covenant and the Ten Commandments was held. And the sons of Benjamin took these women for wives and produced sons, once again, shadow sons, seeds of iniquity, thorns, but that was the tribes of Israel doing that. And I can tell, I didn't get through this, so I'm going to fire up another video immediately. I'm at the 14:20 mark. But Virgins play a big part in what's going on here. The Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians 11, verse 1, he says, "Would to God ye could bear with me a little in my folly, for indeed bear with me." And this is so important. 2 Colossians 11, verse 2 to 22. "For I am jealous over you with godly jealousy, for I have espoused you to one husband, that I may present you as a chaste virgin unto Christ." And for I have espoused you, that is, I have given you over as a daughter to a husband, and that is the daughters of Dan, the daughters of men. The new man is reborn with a new spirituality of the virgin. All right, hey, God bless you for watching this series. I'm going to fire up